The story begins with the introduction of a humble village girl named Amara, who arrives at the mansion of a wealthy, influential family in a bustling African city. The mansion is an architectural masterpiece, a symbol of wealth and status. Amara, with her modest belongings tied in a cloth, looks up in awe at the grandeur of the mansion as she steps through the gate. Her eyes are filled with a mixture of fear and determination, knowing that her life is about to change drastically. Inside the mansion, the family's matriarch, Mrs. Adebayo, is a beautiful but cold woman who oversees the household with an iron fist. She is known for her impeccable appearance and ruthless control over the family and servants. Amara, now standing before Mrs. Adebayo, bows respectfully, feeling the weight of the matriarch's piercing gaze. Mrs. Adebayo's husband, Chief Adebayo, is a powerful businessman with a reputation for charm and cunning. He glances at Amara with mild curiosity before returning to his phone call, seemingly uninterested in the new housemaid. Amara is quickly shown to her quarters by another servant, who warns her in a hushed tone about the strict rules of the house. The maid quarters are small, dimly lit, and far removed from the luxury of the main mansion. Despite the overwhelming difference between her village home and this new environment, Amara resolves to do her job well and stay out of trouble. As Amara settles into her new role, she begins to notice the underlying tension in the household. Mrs. Adebayo is always on edge, snapping at the servants for minor mistakes, while Chief Adebayo often stays out late, leaving his wife alone in their vast, cold mansion. The servants whisper among themselves about the strange occurrences in the house, lights flickering at odd times, shadows moving in the corridors, and the inexplicable coldness that seems to permeate certain rooms. Amara, despite her best efforts to keep her head down, cannot ignore these signs. One night, while cleaning the grand hallway, she hears soft footsteps behind her, but when she turns, no one is there. The atmosphere in the house begins to weigh heavily on her, and she starts to feel that something is not right. Mrs. Adebayo, noticing Amara's unease, gives her a warning. "You're here to work, not to snoop around. Do your job and stay out of trouble," she says with a steely tone. Amara nods, but her curiosity is piqued. What secrets are the walls of this mansion hiding? And why does it feel like she's being watched? As the weeks pass, Amara's presence in the household starts to catch the attention of Chief Adebayo. Unlike the other maids, she carries herself with a quiet dignity, and her hard work does not go unnoticed. Despite Mrs. Adebayo's disdainful attitude towards her, Amara continues to do her best, even going above and beyond in her duties. One evening, as Amara is clearing the dishes after dinner, Chief Adebayo calls her into his study. Nervously, she enters the room, where he is seated behind a large mahogany desk. He smiles warmly at her, a stark contrast to the coldness she is accustomed to from Mrs. Adebayo. He asks her about her life, her background, and her aspirations. Surprised by his interest, Amara answers politely, though she is cautious not to reveal too much. Then, out of nowhere, Chief Adebayo makes an unexpected proposition. He wants her to become his second wife. Amara is stunned. She can't believe what she's hearing. How could a powerful man like Chief Adebayo, already married to such a beautiful woman, want someone like her? The offer is tempting, with promises of wealth and status, but Amara is conflicted. She knows this decision could change her life forever, but at what cost? Amara reluctantly accepts Chief Adebayo's proposal, and overnight, her status in the household changes dramatically. She goes from being a lowly housemaid to the new mistress of the mansion, a position that comes with its own set of challenges. Mrs. Adebayo is furious but powerless to oppose her husband's decision. The once-icy relationship between the two women turns into open hostility, as Mrs. Adebayo finds herself demoted in both status and influence. The servants, confused and fearful, quickly adjust to the new order. Amara, now dressed in fine clothes and adorned with jewelry, tries to navigate her new role with grace. But the tension in the household is palpable, and she feels the eyes of everyone, especially Mrs. Adebayo, on her at all times. The mansion, once a place of opulence and power, now feels like a battlefield. Mrs. Adebayo, consumed by rage and jealousy, begins to plot her revenge. She bides her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike and reclaim her position. Meanwhile, Amara, though outwardly composed, is plagued by doubts. She wonders if she has made a terrible mistake, and whether the price of her new life is too high. Mrs. Adebayo's bitterness and resentment continue to grow, and she begins to devise a plan to take back what she believes is rightfully hers. She reaches out to a mysterious figure from her past, a man known for his dark arts and cunning. With his help, she concocts a scheme that will not only dethrone Amara but also humiliate her in the worst possible way. The plan is set in motion subtly, with small acts of sabotage and manipulation. Amara begins to notice strange things happening around her. Items in her room are moved, she starts hearing whispers in the night, and she feels an unshakable sense of dread. Mrs. Adebayo, now playing the role of a dutiful and subservient first wife, secretly relishes in Amara's growing paranoia. The climax of Mrs. Adebayo's plan comes when she orchestrates a scandal that rocks the entire household. With the help of her dark ally, she manages to turn the tables on Amara, accusing her of things she didn't do, and framing her in such a way that even Chief Adebayo begins to doubt his new wife. Amara, isolated and desperate, finds herself in a fight for her life and reputation. She realizes too late that she has underestimated Mrs. Adebayo's cunning and is now paying the price for her ambition. As Amara's situation becomes increasingly dire, she begins to piece together the truth behind the strange occurrences in the mansion. Driven by desperation, she confronts some of the older servants who have been in the household for many years. Through whispered conversations and clandestine meetings, she uncovers the dark secrets that have been buried in the mansion's walls for decades. The servants reveal that Mrs. Adebayo had once been in a similar situation as Amara, having risen from a modest background to become the powerful wife of Chief Adebayo. However, her ascension was not without sacrifice. To secure her position, Mrs. Adebayo had made a pact with a powerful sorcerer who now demands a terrible price for his services. Amara learns that Mrs. Adebayo's cold demeanor and cruel actions are driven by a fear of losing everything, a fear that is now consuming her. Armed with this new knowledge, Amara realizes that she must not only defend herself against Mrs. Adebayo's schemes but also break the curse that binds the mansion. She decides to seek out the same sorcerer, hoping to end the cycle of deceit and destruction that has plagued the household for years. Determined to end the reign of terror within the mansion, Amara boldly confronts Mrs. Adebayo. In the grand dining hall, with the servants and Chief Adebayo present, Amara reveals everything she has learned. She accuses Mrs. Adebayo of using dark magic to manipulate and control the household, declaring that she will no longer be a pawn in her twisted game. Mrs. Adebayo, taken aback by Amara's boldness, initially denies the accusations, but as Amara continues to speak, the truth becomes impossible to hide. Chief Adebayo, visibly shaken, looks to his wife for an explanation, but she remains silent, her face a mask of rage and fear. The confrontation escalates as Mrs. Adebayo, cornered and desperate, unleashes the full extent of her powers. The room becomes engulfed in a storm of dark energy, with objects flying off the walls and shadows twisting into monstrous shapes. Amara, though terrified, stands her ground, knowing that this is the moment where she must either win or lose everything. In a final, dramatic clash, Amara calls upon the strength of her ancestors, invoking a protective spell that she learned from her village elders. The two women face off in a battle of wills, with the fate of the household hanging in the balance. After a fierce battle, Amara emerges victorious, breaking the dark spell that has haunted the mansion for years. Mrs. Adebayo, defeated and stripped of her powers, collapses in tears, realizing the full extent of the damage she has caused. Chief Adebayo, deeply shaken, offers Amara his sincerest apologies and thanks her for saving the household from a terrible fate. Amara, however, declines his offer to remain in the mansion as his wife. She has seen too much, endured too much, and now desires peace and a return to her simpler life. With a heavy heart, she bids farewell to the mansion and its inhabitants, choosing to leave the city and return to her village. The story ends with Amara walking away from the mansion, her head held high, as the first rays of dawn break over the horizon. The once ominous mansion now stands in serene silence, a symbol of the past that has been overcome. Amara's journey has been one of pain and struggle, but also of strength and self-discovery. She leaves behind a legacy of courage and resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for redemption and a new beginning. Amara's return to her village is bittersweet. She is greeted with a mix of relief and curiosity by the villagers, who had heard rumors of her time in the city. Many of the older women look at her with knowing eyes, understanding the trials she must have faced. Her family, though overjoyed to have her back, senses the change in her. She is no longer the naive girl who left, but a woman who has faced darkness and emerged stronger. Her mother, in particular, embraces her with tears in her eyes, grateful to have her daughter back. The village elders also gathered to welcome her home, and in a private meeting, Amara shares her experiences with them. They listen intently, offering their wisdom and guidance as she begins to heal from the trauma she endured. Life in the village is simple but fulfilling. Amara finds solace in the familiar routines of village life, and gradually, the scars of her past begin to fade. She becomes an important figure in the community, known for her strength and wisdom. However, she cannot forget the lessons she learned in the mansion, nor the sacrifices she made. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this story. Please kindly like the video, comment your thoughts, and please subscribe for more enchanting tales. Thank you.